Good evening. I call to order this special meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District. It is Tuesday, January 5th, and the time is 5 p.m. Please stand. Board Member Greenberg, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will have a roll call starting from my far right.
Zach Lindsay.
John Michael Greenberg.
And Patty Beckman. All 5 board members are present, and we do have a quorum. Members of the governing board and non-board member participants will participate in the meeting in person with masks on via an online platform or may participate by telephonic communication. Effective immediately and until further notice, the Scottsdale Unified School District Board will be enforcing the Governor's Executive Order 2020-43 to limit all public gatherings to 50 people, which includes governing board members, administration, presenters, and members of the public. Members of the public will also be able to view public portions of this meeting online at the usual live-streamed option through YouTube. Welcome to 2021. While we are still encountering significant challenges, I know we are optimistic about that this year will bring us a calmer and more consistent environment in which our teachers feel safe and valued and our students can thrive and grow. And welcome to our 3 new board members. Board members Chanowski, Lindsay, and Dr. Hartwells. Thank you for taking on this significant role in shaping our children's futures. I hope you find it as rewarding as I have, and I look forward to serving with all of you. Okay, now we go straight to our approval of the agenda. Do any board members have any changes to the agenda? No? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second? Board Member Greenberg moves. Board Member Chanowski seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. The board agenda is approved. Okay, we're going to move to our first action item, and I'm going to describe the process as last year it was a little cumbersome. We will open it up with nominations for president. As soon as a person is nominated or self-nominated, they will either accept or decline. At that time, we will move to someone else potentially being nominated, self-nominated or nominated. Then they will accept or decline. Each nominee will have some moment to speak about why they want to take on the role, and then we will move to a vote. Once the vote is complete, our new board president will sit in this chair, and we will convene for 5 minutes, or take a recess for 5 minutes, and we will do the same process for vice president. Okay, so right now I will open with nominations for president. Board Member Chanowski.
I would like to nominate Jan Michael Greenberg as president of the SUSD Governing Board.
Board Member Greenberg, do you accept or decline?
I will accept that nomination. Thank you very much.
Okay, are there any other nominations or self-nominations? Okay, Board Member Greenberg, would you like to make a statement?
Well, I thank you for the nomination. I really appreciate it. I think this governing board is a fresh perspective and a fresh start to this school year. I couldn't be more happy to be working with all of you and to be working with Dr. Menzel and our administration in tackling the COVID challenges head on, as we have been doing, and listening and working with our staff. And I think that with the new board and the perspectives each member brings, we have 2 educators on the board. That's a first for a very long time, not just 1, but 2 educators on this board. One who taught in SUSD for years and is a beloved teacher and a respected member of our community, just like all 5 of us here. So thank you for that as well. But really what I want to see and what I would like to accomplish over the next year is focused on how the board itself can be better, be more efficient, have better meetings, and accomplish more that not only focuses on our students, but supports every member of staff who works with our students on a day-to-day basis to accomplish that goal. So to that end, I think we would all like to see more efficient board meetings that do not last as long, looking at how we can schedule our year and see how we can make sure that all the priorities that board members have are put on that agenda so that we can discuss it thoroughly. I also would like to see an expansion of the committee system. Dr. Menzel introduced to us a small committee system for the policy committee, And I think that that has been very rewarding and very successful. The amount of policies that we've gone through were very heavy this year. And I think both Ms. Marshall and Dr. Menzel can agree that when we presented it to the board, it was a pretty swift process, whereas in prior years, it has been a pretty complex and burdensome one of nitpicking different things. And I would like to see that expanded out for all sorts of different issues that our board members care about and that our administration community cares about, because I think working together as a board, cooperating with one another is the best way to get things done. So that's really what I hope to accomplish this year, and I really appreciate all of your support in doing that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we move to a vote. All in favor of Jan Michael Greenberg serving in the role as governing board president?
Aye.
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 Aye. All, motion passes, I think 5-0. Okay, we will take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
All right.
Our meeting is back in session at 5:10 PM. Nominations are now in order for the office of Vice President. Do we have any nominations?
I have a statement I'd like to make quickly.
Yes?
I'd like to see the role of Vice President expanded. It's pretty much just a title at the moment, the only function being to step in if the president is absent. I would like to see it be more hands-on and more involved in learning the role of president. This is why I will respectfully decline any nomination, nor will I self-nominate for vice president. I would have stepped up for president, but I don't think I have anything else to learn or gain in the role of vice president, and I would like to see someone else new take on that role.
Thank you. Well, if there are no nominations, I would like to begin with the nomination, and I would like to nominate Ms. Sanowski as Vice President to the board. I believe that Ms. Beckman is absolutely correct. The role of the Vice President does need to be expanded. It's a very difficult job just being President. I really respect Ms. Beckman's work as President and Vice President, and I think that it's a role that could really help with the duties that are given to us, especially in planning the agenda, working with administration officials. And I think that Ms. Sanowski at this time is the right person for that role. And I hope that all three of our new board members ascend to that role and ascend to the presidency, because I think it's a sign of continuity and leadership in our district, and it's something that every single individual, if they so choose, they can bring their own unique perspective and expertise to that role. And I think in this time and in this moment, especially in working through COVID and working with our teaching staff, Ms. Sanowski would be perfect for the role of Vice President. Ms. Sanowski, do you
Yes,
accept?
yes, I do. I actually honor, recognize, and accept that nomination. I would like to continue to use my skills as an educator and as a leader to assist the president of our governing board in working with our school district to not only recognize the challenges of educating kids, but also to focus our attention on attracting and retaining the best staff members in our district so our students have the best potential. Thank you.
Are there any other nominations for Vice President?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, Ms. Beckman articulated an expansion of duties. Is there a list of duties that are written down somewhere, formalized, that we should be looking at?
I don't
have one.
believe, Ms. Marshall, is this an appropriate conversation during the nomination process? There is a response to that. I just don't want to violate open meeting law.
It's fine to go ahead and answer that question in this item.
Yeah. Ms. Beckman, would you like to begin?
Sure. So the reason I brought that up is because as the vice president, you're made very aware that should the board president not be able to attend a meeting or a function that the president is invited to, the vice president typically steps up. However, you learn kind of on the fly. Does that make sense? You learn through the board meeting, observing, et cetera. And I think we can make that process a little bit better. I think the vice president role can be a little bit more involved, so they learn really what's involved in setting the agenda. They learn kind of more of the leadership things, so that should they want to pursue that role as president the following year, it's a seamless transition. So currently, when I was vice president, I think I led one meeting, and I was prepared for it because I was president the previous year. But should you be caught off guard as vice president and a board president be ill or something, you end up having a meeting that may not go as seamlessly as it could have should that vice president have more training or be a little bit more involved in.
And if I may add to that, I think Ms. Beckman is entirely correct. Not only that, it was actually discussed last year in January that the vice president and president would work more together on agenda setting, and I'm not sure that those efforts were really borne out. Maybe they were, but it would be my hope that working with whoever is elected vice president, that they would be included as much as legally possible. Again, open meeting law, might restrict that, but to the extent possible to include the vice president in those meetings, in those discussions, so that it is a seamless transition. But also, I believe I benefit from, and I think any president benefits from more perspectives and ideas in a room than just their own voice, as much as I like to, I might like to hear my own.
Well, and I will say, add one more thing. Michelle, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Historically, the vice president or the clerk or whatever, we used to, as vice president, sign I think it was the employment, the teacher contracts, et cetera, if I'm not mistaken. And then a couple of years ago, that was changed to have the president do it. Why, I don't know. I can't speak to that. But so that used to be a duty of the vice president. It is no longer. It is the president.
And I would just reference board policy BDB, which talks about board officers. It spells out more specifically the role of the board president. But under vice president, in addition to filling in when the president's not at the meeting, the vice president of the governing board shall perform the duties as are prescribed by the board. So it's wide open in terms of how that structure is developed, and so there's some flexibility for the board to figure out, those specific areas of responsibility.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Although a follow-up would be, it is the intent of the board then to prescribe more specific duties for the vice president's role going forward?
That is something that would be placed on a future agenda.
Okay, yes, thank you.
So I do have a question, just to follow up with Board Member Hart Wells. Is that how we want to address you, or Dr. Hart Wells? How would you prefer?
Whatever makes you comfortable.
Because right now, and Michelle, again, sorry, I would have to put you on the spot to step in, because this has been a discussion, I think, before we move to a vote. I know that Board Member Shanowski has accepted her nomination. I think it's appropriate that maybe if the vice president's duties are explained as much to the fullest extent that we can before somebody accepts. Does that make sense? I don't want to leave a conversation about the vice president's role being somewhat ambiguous before we have candidates accept or decline the role. Sorry.
No need to apologize. Thank you for the question, Board Member Beckman. I had also pulled up policy BDB, and I think I hit send before I got up, so you all will have it. The duties of the vice president are what are delineated in there, and you're correct, it's not very comprehensive. I'm happy to pull it up and show it to you if you want. And the board can, at a future meeting, look at that policy and talk about what you want to see in it. You can make it whatever you want to make it.
Are there any further questions for Ms. Marshall? No? Thank you very much. Are there any further nominations for vice president? If not, the nominations are closed. It is moved and seconded that the board approve the nomination of Ms. Sanowski as vice president of the board. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The nomination of Ms. Sanowski as vice president passes 5-0. Thank you. We will now adjourn for 5 minutes to reset the table. Apologies. The board reconvenes at 5:20 PM. We will now move to agenda item 4, superintendent's comments. Dr. Menzel?
Good evening, President Greenberg, Vice President Sanowski, and the members of the governing board. I'll myself remember to turn on my microphone from here on out. Congratulations to President Greenberg and Vice President Sanowski on your election, and to the new members of the governing board, welcome. As I think about the last 6 months, I have to tell you, I'm glad to have put 2020 in the books. It turned out to be a year that I think none of us could have possibly imagined or predicted, but it's one where, as a district, I think we navigated as best we could with the information we had and got through the first semester in a way that I think that everyone in the district can be proud. There are 5 months remaining in this current school year based on the current calendar. And while there is a light at the end of the tunnel, we still have some difficult days ahead as we continue to navigate the challenges related to COVID and meeting the needs of our students and staff in this environment. So first, I'd like to begin with a brief COVID update in our current situation. And some of you know, actually all of you know, that yesterday we held a town hall meeting for elementary staff because our K-5 buildings, preschool, and special ed self-contained are back in person. And so there was a desire to be able to create an opportunity and a forum for our staff to raise questions and to share their comments and thoughts and concerns. And we had more than 190 people participate in that town hall conversation. And I did send to the governing board some of those comments that were not read during the town hall meeting, but wanted to be sure that all of those perspectives were shared with you. As you know, the data in Maricopa County, the data in Scottsdale Unified School District shows a high number of cases per 100,000, shows a positivity rate that's over 12% as of last week's data. And COVID-like illness, that benchmark metric is at 12.8%. So we're in a place of substantial community spread of COVID and a lot of questions in terms of where we are. There are also a number of questions that other districts are wrestling with. As you know, there's been news reports today about what Chandler's decided to do and what Gilbert has decided to do. In our district, you also recall that when we sent out our communication on December 30th reflecting the conversation I had with Dr. Sonnenschein talking about where the metrics were and whether or not there was any modification in their recommendations. She did note that she would monitor carefully, recommend to us that we monitor carefully our plans related to return for middle school and high school students based on the community spread data and what we see as we start the new school year. Given all of those factors, I am recommending that we have a special governing board meeting on Thursday, beginning at 5 o'clock. There are a number of topics that I think are really important and timely for us to address. One is to, as a new governing board, have a conversation about how we plan to proceed in the second semester and being very clear with our public about that deliberate decision-making process. I think the lack of uncertainty or confusion about that process is one that causes angst for staff and families alike. And so it will be important as a new governing board and leadership team that we have an opportunity to have that conversation. Secondly, there are a few other items of, I think, significance and importance to discuss, and we have legal opinions that are being prepared on a couple of them related to vaccination process, whether or not requiring negative COVID tests before returning in person is something that should be considered. And then the FFCRA, the federal law that provided for sick leave time related to COVID, that expired on December 31st. But there are some ways that we might be able to extend that benefit for our employees, and we're also working on putting that proposal together. So if the board is agreeable, my recommendation is that we schedule that special meeting. I am recommending Thursday because we'll have the most recent county data in addition to all the other information that I think would be pertinent to our discussion. I also know that governing board members and I have been receiving a number of emails from staff and families alike, many weighing in support of in-person, many weighing in support of returning to all virtual. And there are a lot of valid points on all sides of the conversation, and we need to have an intentional governing board discussion, I think, at that time. One piece of information that is emerging but positive is that right after we concluded the town hall meeting with elementary staff yesterday, I received a phone call from contact at Honor Health. And she said, Scott, I think we have good news. And the good news is that Honor Health is working with Maricopa County Department of Public Health to create designated days for vaccination of our school staff. The plan is to include Scottsdale Unified and Paradise Valley School District on the same 3 days, a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, from 8 to 4. And those days would be dedicated just for educators, school staff in our two districts. There's a request for some assistance in terms of volunteers to help greet and guide, as well as some assistance with people who are trained to implement or administer the vaccines. So the thing that we don't have confirmed yet are the dates, but right now it's looking to be before the end of January. And I'm hoping that by Thursday we'll have confirmation of those dates. They can vaccinate 1,500 individuals per day. It's an 8 to 4 shift on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And they're hoping to be able to vaccinate between 4,500 and 5,000 individuals over those 3 days in our two school districts. And so that was exciting news to me because the uncertainty about when we would begin the 1B vaccination process had a lot of people concerned, and I think now that we'll be much closer to having clarification on that in the next few days. 3 other things, briefly, but importantly, I'd like to mention. As you know, a while ago, Debbie Spalding, our CSO, submitted her intent to retire, and her last day working for Scottsdale Unified School District is tomorrow. And I would be remiss if I didn't call out specifically Debbie and the work that she's done, particularly since COVID hit. So I didn't actually meet Debbie until sometime after the board hired me. I've had a chance to work with her both in the transition and during the course of my tenure here. And what I know is that she has put in very long hours, worked very hard, and had tremendous foresight, unlike some other districts where we actually had ordered equipment so that we were prepared for virtual learning at the beginning of the year. And I think it would be appropriate for us to give a round of applause to Debbie and express our appreciation for all the work that she's done in helping us navigate the challenges around COVID. We are grateful, and the district is better off for the service that you provided. And Debbie, I know you're in the cloud, so if you want to show your face, then we can look at you when we applaud you.
Thank you. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Debbie. Your service is truly valued. And we do wish you well in retirement, and I think there are probably some other people who are jealous. The other person that I want to mention tonight is leaving to take another position in another organization. Now, if she was going to a different K-12 district, I would be less magnanimous in my comments, but because she's going to Arizona State University, I also want to express appreciation for the 13 years of service that Michelle Marshall has provided to Scottsdale Unified School District. As you all know, it's no small task to provide in-house legal counsel to a district like ours, and she's been through some very interesting challenges over the course of those 13 years. Yet she still comes to work every day with good humor and a deep commitment to serving the needs of the students in this district. And you will be greatly missed, Michelle, and thank you for all you've done on behalf of Scottsdale Unified School District.
Glad I have a mask on.
And finally, just a reminder that on Saturday, because we're going to see a lot of each other this week, we have our board retreat that will be facilitated by Dr. Steve Joel, the consultant who conducted the superintendent search. We'll convene in this room at 8 o'clock. We will have breakfast available for you. We do encourage people to dress comfortably because it is a board retreat. And there is a packet in front of you with the handouts that he'll be going through, but there's one part of it that's a homework assignment in advance. It's a personality indicator test. There are no instructions, so rather than let you guess what the instructions are, it's fill out one of the four across horizontally, and then total the columns vertically, and the rest we'll figure out what to make of it when we get here on Saturday morning. But with that, President Greenberg, I will turn the agenda back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. We will now move to agenda item 5A, Annual Open Meeting Law Training. Ms. Marshall?
Thank you, President Greenberg, and congratulations,
Thank you.
and welcome new board members, and congratulations. Great to see you all here. As many of you know, we do this every year. It's our annual open meeting law training. I try to make it as painless as possible. I encourage any questions or discussion. That always makes it more interesting than just going through. There is a lot of information in this presentation. If you have a copy of it in front of you, and it will be posted on our website. I am not going to read the slides to you, but do stop me if you want to talk about something that you see on the slides. And I'm available for any questions later as well. With that, I'm using the wrong mouse. Okay. So the reason we started doing this every January is an old consent decree where a former board was alleged to have violated the open meeting law, particularly in regards to executive sessions. The other reason we do it is it's just a good idea to kind of remind ourselves and remind the public of what our rules are about open meeting law. So we do this every January. The decree, which is outdated, required that we cover all aspects of open meeting law and emphasize the strict requirements on executive sessions, in particular the legal advice executive session. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The public policy behind the open meeting law, which is shortened to OML in a lot of our conversations, is, of course, government in the sunshine. Every state in the union has an open meeting law, a version of the open meeting law, and the federal version is called FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. So this is just what the statute says about the public policy behind the open meeting law. It says that all meetings have to be in public and allow the public to attend and listen. And any legal action that you take as a board has to happen in public. The statute defines meeting. I won't read that to you. It does include, specifically, this is straight from statute, a one-way electronic communication by a member of the board sent to a quorum and proposing legal action. This is a part of the statute that doesn't get pointed out a lot, but it's a good reminder, especially in the age of texting and emails. It's very easy to accidentally go afoul of the law. So it's a good reminder. Even a one-way communication can possibly violate the open meeting law. And of course, an exchange between a quorum likely violates the law as well. The statute defines legal action as a collective decision, commitment, or promise made by the board. This is straight from the Attorney General's agency handbook regarding all kinds of topics, but including the open meeting law. The question is whether the matter you're discussing may foreseeably require an action of the board at a later date. If that's the case, then the discussion should not be had among a quorum of board members outside of a public meeting. Sorry, this thing is sensitive. Who's covered? The board, this board, but also advisory committees. Advisory committees are defined in the statute. That's a committee that's been established by you as a board. You voted on it and said, we want this committee to give us advice or recommendation about a particular decision. We don't have a lot of advisory committees. One of the ones that kind of fits, it's not technically called an advisory committee, is our curriculum adoption. So curriculum adoption committees tend to have a lot of our teaching and learning staff, and then often members of the public, parents, interested parties participating. They follow the open meeting law as well. They post notices just like we do for governing board meetings. And I actually train those committees every time. Cheryl Redner's really good about getting me on their agenda to remind them of what the rules are. They keep minutes, all the things that you do as a governing board. Not all the things. They do not have public comment typically. They do follow a whole bunch of other rules about allowing the public to see what they're looking at adopting. The open meeting law has an exception, of course, for any student matters of discipline, suspension, expulsion. Those do not have to be held in public for privacy concerns. Notices of meetings must be posted at least 24 hours in advance. That 24 hours can include a Saturday. Sundays and official holidays cannot be counted in the 24 hours. Notices have to be understandable to the layperson, to understand what is it that the board's going to talk about. And in general, it's a violation to talk about anything that's not noticed. So you noticed President Greenberg asked if we should be talking about the vice president's role, and we're always kind of gauging that. Have we gone kind of beyond, let's bring it back to what's on the agenda and put it on a future agenda if the board wants to have further discussion. We are accessible to persons with disabilities. We have a notice, a part of our public notice that instructs anybody who needs a reasonable accommodation to contact the board secretary for assistance. Making sure I'm not skipping something. And then we have executive sessions. You all probably know what an executive session is, but it is defined in statute as a gathering of a quorum of the board outside the view of the public. And there are currently 9 enumerated reasons for which you can meet in executive session. Of course, a quorum is a minimum number of the board required to take legal action. In a 5-member board, that's 3 people. In an executive session, only the members of the board and only those individuals who are also reasonably necessary for the board to do whatever it is it's trying to do are allowed to attend the executive session. No one else can attend. So several of the reasons for which you can meet an executive session. One is employment matters. You've seen us post under Section A1 if the board needs to discuss hiring someone, changing their assignment, discipline, resignation, et cetera. The employee also gets at least 24 hours notice that the board will be discussing the employee in an executive session. Under A3, you can meet in executive session for legal advice. As I noted in the beginning of the presentation, that old board in the 90s got in trouble over legal advice, and the decree specifically said, you can't just have a lawyer in the room and call it legal advice. It really needs to be limited to legal advice if you're going to go into executive session outside the presence of the public. A5 covers what's known as meet and confer. If the board is in negotiations with employee groups, the board is allowed to meet in executive session to discuss its position and plan for negotiations. A7 allows you to meet in executive session regarding sale, purchase, or lease of real estate. And this one is the newest addition to the statute allowing executive sessions. It's under Section A9, and it talks about security plans. And I've got the language here specifically for you. You're allowed to meet in executive session to discuss security plans, procedures, et cetera. When this first came out just last year, there was some discussion as to whether discussion of COVID-related health and safety was permitted. My initial reaction was, no, you can't do that. Nobody's going to tolerate that. And that seems to be the consensus among school attorneys, that don't even try it. And I know this board wouldn't do that, but I think this was really meant to get at not only emergency response plans, but cybersecurity and things that you wouldn't necessarily want to be talking about in public for purposes of keeping it away from the eyes of hackers. The notice of the executive session can't just be a blanket notice. It has to say exactly why it is you're going into executive session. You are allowed to, and we do have this sort of a standing notice that the board could vote at any public meeting to go into executive session for legal advice on a matter that's on your agenda. Public comment, reminder that you're actually not required to have public comment. This is what I was talking about with the curriculum adoption committees. You're not required to have public comment. If you do, there are some rules you need to follow. The public has the right to attend and listen. They don't necessarily have the right to make comment unless the board has granted that. This board has granted that, and we follow that. With regard to public comments, the board's not permitted to kind of get into a discussion with the person making a public comment, except for very limited reasons. You can respond, board members can respond to criticism, and you can ask for a future agenda item to discuss the matter, or ask staff to follow up. I mentioned emails and text earlier. They are an area that you have to be extra careful. It's just a more casual way of communicating, and you have to kind of remind yourself, okay, is this something that might be something we need to talk about as a board, and should I be putting that in an email, especially to another board member or more than one other board member? I know Dr. Menzel does this. I try to do this when we're communicating with the board. BCC, blind copying you, so that you can't even make the mistake of replying all for this reason. Serial discussions are specifically mentioned by the Attorney General in their agency handbook, and this quote is from the agency handbook. Essentially, the rule is that you can't sort of talk to board member one can't talk to board member two and say, this is how I'm going to vote on something. And then have board member two talk to board member three and say, hey, board member one and I are going to vote this way on something. That's what they mean by serial conversation. That too is a violation of the open meeting law. I have more of the language from the agency handbook here for your consideration. I think it's just a really good explanation by the Attorney General's office as to how they view these kinds of violations. Superintendents are allowed to report to the board information about decisions that are being made at the administrative level. What they can't do is what's commonly known as polling the board. So a superintendent can't call each of you and say, how are you going to vote on this? I'm going to decide whether or not to put it on the agenda for this reason. That is also a violation. But it is fine to give reports to board members. What happens if the law is violated? Courts can impose civil penalties. The current statute allows for up to $2,500 per person per violation of the open meeting law. If a court finds that a member of the board knowingly violated the open meeting law with the intent to deprive the public of the information, the court can order that a board member be removed from office. In addition, if the board has a legal meeting and takes action in violation of the open meeting law, any action that was taken is nullified unless a later properly noticed meeting happens and the board at that meeting ratifies that decision. And that is the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Marshall? I do have one question. Is a board member allowed to email the other board members a request for an item to be placed on the agenda? For example, could I email the rest of the board and say, I would like to place X on the agenda?
I'm not sure that would violate the open meeting law. It is the better practice not to get into that kind of a discussion because it invites that, it walks up to the line, I would say. I would rather see a board member talk to the superintendent and say, I want to put this on the agenda and have it work through the process of the policies that talk about the board president and the superintendent setting the agenda together and taking requests from board members. Those policies could use some work, but I would rather not see board members email everybody else on the board and say, I'd like to talk about this, because starts to get into that serial conversation.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank
Are there
you.
any other questions? Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Marshall. The board will now move to the approval of Agenda Item 6, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Ms. Beckman makes the motion. Is there a second to the motion? Ms. Sanowski makes the second. It is moved and seconded that the board approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any debate? If there is no debate, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries 5-0. The board will now move to action item 7A, approval of the selection of the Self-Insurance Trust Board trustee for 2020-2021. Nominations are now in order for the Self-Insurance Trust Board trustee for 2020-2021. Are there any nominations? Ms. Beckman?
I would like to self-nominate to be the trust board trustee.
Ms. Beckman self-nominates. Is there a second? Ms. Hartwell seconds. Are there any other nominations? I would like to nominate Mr. Lindsay for this role. I believe that he has done quite a lot of work in this area and can bring a lot of wealth and information to that board. Is there a second for that nomination? Or Mr. Lindsay, do you accept? I guess I should say.
Sure.
Mr. Lindsay accepts. There's a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, if there's no discussion, it is moved and seconded that the board approve the nomination of Ms. Beckman as Self-Insurance Trust Board trustee for 2020-21. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
3 say aye. All those opposed say no. No. All those abstain?
I'm abstaining.
Abstaining. Okay. The motion to nominate Ms. Beckman as the trustee for the Self-Insurance Trust for 2020-2021 passes, and Ms. Beckman is elected the Self-Insurance Trustee. Congratulations. The board will now move to action item 7B, selection of a delegate and alternate to the Arizona School Boards Association ASBA Delegate Assembly. Nominations are now in order for the delegate to the Arizona School Boards Association Delegate Assembly. Do we have any nominations?
I would like to
Sanowski?
self-nominate for that.
Ms. Sanowski self-nominates. Do we have a second? Second. Ms. Hartwell seconds. Do we have any other nominations?
I would like to nominate Board Member Greenberg.
Thank you. I will accept that nomination. The only basis really for my acceptance of the nomination is that I applied for the legislative committee at ASBA and as well as their policy committee because they were looking for new volunteers. I don't think, however, that not being a delegate affects that at all. So I'm not sure that that's a problem, but I will check with them. And if not, hopefully you would be interested in taking up that role and could fill in for me there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
However needed.
All right. Oh, yes, Ms. Beckman.
Don't we have an alternate for that as
Yeah.
well?
We do have an alternate, yeah, but we'll first elect the delegate. Well, so in that case, I will reject the nomination. I appreciate it, but that's a very good point, Ms. Beckman. Okay, are there any further nominations for delegate? Okay. It is moved and seconded that the board approve the nomination of Ms. Sanowski as delegate to the Arizona School Boards Association Delegate Assembly. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ms. Sanowski is elected delegate to the Arizona School Boards Association. Congratulations. Nominations are now in order for the alternate delegate to the Arizona School Boards Association. Do we have any nominations?
I'd like to self-nominate.
Ms. Hartwell self-nominates. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Beckman seconds. Any other nominations? Good. It is moved and seconded that Ms. Hartwells be nominated as the alternate delegate for the Arizona School Boards Association Delegate Assembly. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Ms. Hartwells is elected the alternate delegate to the Arizona School Boards Association. Congratulations. This concludes the board's agenda for this evening. The chair moves to adjourn this January 5th, 2020 special meeting of the Scottsdale Unified Number 48 Governing Board at 5:51 PM. Is there a second to the motion? Ms. Hartwell seconds. It is moved and seconded that the board adjourn this January 5th, 2020 special meeting of the Governing Board. Is there any debate? No? Good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.